Welcome, kindred. It's Jessica with your astro and tarot forecast for this solar eclipse in Libra, our new moon and solar eclipse in Libra that is happening on the 2nd of October. What I'm going to share with you in this video is relevant for basically the whole of October. So it's kind of like an October forecast as well. I have made a live astrology forecast for October already, which will kind of complement this as well, so you can kind of watch them both if you want to get like the kind of full details of all the things. This is going to be looking mainly at this actual eclipse and this moon cycle and what this is all about for us. So I'm looking at the eclipse chart in my honeycomb planner, which is an amazing personalized planner, but it doesn't matter how you find or where you look at, or even if you don't have an eclipse chart, because I'm going to explain all the details about it anyway. So this is the chart. And I'm going to talk about the main signatures and things and give like my take on what this means and how it's going to be playing out for us in our lives. This is a really significant eclipse. We did have an eclipse, we were already in eclipse season because we had our Pisces full moon eclipse a couple of weeks ago, which was there, which was a strange one because even though it was an eclipse, it was only a very slight eclipse, and it also opened up that whole Virgo Pisces axis. So the themes of that eclipse were very different from the eclipses that we've been having over the last year or so now. Whereas this eclipse, now we're back on the Libra Aries axis, which means we are working again on those themes of self and other. And I'm seeing this eclipse in general as being just, we're kind of tying up loose ends in a way. There are a lot of kind of signatures that are kind of coming to an end, or it's giving us that opportunity to finish this work that we've been doing on that Libra Aries axis, that kind of work of balancing our own needs with the needs of others. Things like boundaries, things like being able to stand up for ourselves. These are all things that we have been working on while we've been having these Libra Aries eclipses. There is still another one coming next year, so this is not like the final eclipse on this axis, but it is, we're kind of getting to the end of it now, getting to the end of that work now. So it's interesting to kind of see how the aspects that are in play in this eclipse, the planets that are in play in this eclipse, are calling for us to do, to take action in some way. So let's look at some of the details. And this eclipse is definitely hitting everyone really because of the way things are set out in the chart, especially if you've got planets around 10 to 15 degrees of cardinal signs, but also the mutable and fixed signs as well. So yeah, it's one that we're gonna notice this one, I think, more so perhaps than the Pisces one last time. And obviously, depending on your own chart, you'll you'll sort of have more or less of this work also going on in your own life. When we see overlaps between the eclipse chart and our own charts, we can see that this is particularly momentous for us, or perhaps it's not. If you are interested, I do have an astrology course that is happening soon as well, so I'll put the link for that down below. But let's get on with it. Let's talk about the eclipse. So the eclipse is in Libra. We've got the sun and the moon here. I've got Taurus rising in this chart because that is for my time, for my place where I am in Wales. If you're in a different location, yours will look a little bit different as far as rising goes, but it won't alter the placement of the planet. So for all of us, we're going to have the sun and the moon at 10 degrees of Libra for this eclipse. So we've got sun, moon, and you'll probably be able to see there's the south node. So eclipses happen when we have the sun and the moon, like we have a new moon or a full moon, which is nearer the nodes. So we can see the south node is at 6 degrees, and then the sun and the moon are at 10 degrees. So this is quite close. When they're all completely together, that is when we get a total eclipse, when we get the really kind of impressive ones like we had. Was that this year? Gosh, it feels like time has already gone. Maybe it was last year. I feel like it was maybe this year though. Oh gosh, time has gone strange lately, don't you think? So yeah, sun and moon and south node, all at these 10 degrees of Libra. And when we have a south node eclipse, the south node is about releasing, letting go, kind of surrender in some ways as well. But it can also kind of be where we don't want to do that. So sometimes when we have eclipses, eclipses are new or full moons, but they're kind of more supercharged in a way. For me, they tend to like generally I don't see astrology as something that like causes us to do stuff. I see astrology as mirroring us, so that we're looking at the signatures of what is going on in the sky and then recognizing those same patterns, those same signatures that are happening in our own life. It's not that like this eclipse is causing us to do this, but I do find that when there are eclipses as opposed to just regular new moons or full moons, there is a kind of more fated quality about it. There seems to, it feels sometimes like the stuff is more out of our own control, which is why I think it's even more important to dig into this. Like that's why we like to be informed about this stuff, because then we can make, we're prepared. It's like if you are going into a battle, or if you're going on a holiday, let's say, so we got some nicer scenarios as well. If you go unprepared, then you can still kind of muddle through, but it's not the same as if you go prepared. And so by looking at the astrology, we can be prepared for these things that are happening in our lives. So I'm not trying to say this to like scare any of you at all. Please don't be scared by this. Like this stuff is happening, and life is happening all around us and within us, so we don't need to be scared of this stuff. But just by being informed, it can help us to sort of think, oh yeah, okay, I can see these patterns, and this is how I can work with this energy so that I can actually craft the things that I want into my life. That is the whole point. This is why I do astrology. This is why, like, a big part of my astro magic. So we've got sun, we've got moon, we've got the south node. So this eclipse, we already know, because it's on the south node, it's going to be about letting go. It's going to be about kind of finalizing things, finishing things, composting, getting rid of things as well, like this new moon. Even though it is a new moon, which usually means kind of like setting intentions, when we have a south node eclipse on the new moon, it can indicate a cycle which is more about letting go. And like if you're in the northern hemisphere, as I am, then we're being taught this lesson by the trees around us as we go through October, as they start to turn color and will be dropped. We need to be able to do that ourselves in our own lives, and it's not easy to do because we want to kind of hold on to things because of fear. Usually, it feels like scary to let go of things, but the only way that we can make space for new things to come into our lives is if we can do this process of letting go. So the trees are showing us, nature teaches us how to do that, and we just need to listen and we need to follow and flow with that. So yes, on this whole month of October is going to be like a month of release, a month of letting go, and a month of letting go in terms of probably physical possessions. It's a really good time for like having a clear out. Also in terms of like stuck stuff, stuff that's been like holding us back, bad ways of thinking, like unhelpful, I shouldn't say bad, unhelpful ways of thinking, patterns and things that are keeping us stuck, especially as it relates to these Aries and Libra themes, because it's happening on this Aries and Libra axis. So themes around like who we are at our core self, what is like in alignment to us, what lights us up, are we being kind of truthful to ourselves? And so the things we need to let go of in that respect are things that like just don't feel right to us. Like we know we have these internal systems that let us know when things don't feel right, and like we're encouraged by the kind of like unhealthy monoculture that we tend to live in now to kind of just push those intuitions down. But what we need to be doing is actually listening to them and bringing ourselves into alignment with our true selves and what it is that we're here to do, what it is that we're supposed to be doing in this world. So what in your life at the moment feels misaligned, especially in terms of your core self? What activities are you doing? What people are in your life? What places are you going to that just feel wrong to you? In this moon cycle, in this, basically, like I said, of whole of October, is a really good time to start pruning or dropping, like the leaves drop off the trees, those things out of our lives. And like, with neons, like we can't always just like kind of do this instantly, but we can at least observe and sort of see, yes, this person or this situation is not healthy for me. I can let me try and find ways that I can start to let this go, to move this out of my life as it's supposed to be happening. Also in terms of, like I say, relationships with other people, relationships of all kinds actually. So in our relationships, where are we not able to be ourselves? With who or whom, I think it should be. Are we not able to be ourselves? Why? you know, it gives us the opportunity to kind of dig into those things over this moon cycle. And yeah, I'm really, you know, like if you're familiar with shadow work, this is like a perfect cycle to be doing this shadow work through October. And what's great is that you might have noticed that Mercury is also here with the Sun and the Moon and the South Node. So the Sun and Moon are at 10, Mercury is at 11 Libra, so it's very close to this eclipse that is happening. So Mercury's kind of being eclipsed as well. It is, when we have Mercury close to the eclipse point like that, close to the Sun and Moon, it means that that kind of mercurial communication, that way of receiving information, kind of gets reset as well. And like especially around the time of the eclipse itself, around that dark moon time when we won't be able to see the Sun and the Moon, and well, you know, we'll still see the Sun. Even though it's a solar eclipse, it's not going to be completely obliterated, but it is obliterated somewhat. The Moon will be invisible completely. Mercury will also not be visible. So it's that kind of time when communication comes from beyond, you know. So a really good time to be doing tarot readings, a really good time to be journaling, to kind of allow insight to flow through you, not necessarily from those kind of like verified sources, you know. It's like a really good time for gnosis, for personal gnosis, for receiving information. So yeah, I love that the Mercury is there with the Sun and Moon as part of this eclipse signature as well. And if we look at Venus, Venus is the ruler of this eclipse because Venus rules Libra. So Venus is actually in Scorpio, like almost exactly like, you know, like in a strange aspect, like almost like in a hidden aspect from where this eclipse is happening. And Venus is not like super happy in Scorpio. I did talk about Venus's ingress into Scorpio. I think I made like a reel, maybe a YouTube short about this. Venus in Scorpio is like when Inanna journeys into the underworld. So she is going on an underworld journey because she knows that something is not right with her. Even though things might look rosy on the surface in her life, in her relationships, she knows that there is something not quite right in the deep below, you know. Inanna turned her ear to the deep below, and she journeys down there and basically meets her death, and she meets her dark self, her kind of dark self. So this is an indicator that this eclipse is opening a portal for us into doing some really deep shadow work, some really probably scary, you know, like we don't always like want to face those kind of shadows in ourselves. We're taught to just pretend that they're not there, sweep it all under the rug. But no, you know, when we face them, when we shine light on them, it illuminates them, and then we can see that there is not anything to be afraid of. But that does take inner work, and it does take courage to do that, which also brings in Mars. So we will talk about that in a second as well. But just to kind of really capture that essence of Venus in Scorpio. Venus is at home in Libra. She is not at home in Scorpio. No, she's moved from her home, from the safety of her home, into those kind of scorpionic depths, and she is seeking for something that is troubling her, that she doesn't even know what it is, you know. And like I said, she, in the story of Inanna, which I'm seeing as like a metaphor or a teaching for this period of time, it'd be a really good time to dig into that myth, I think. You know, there's such wisdom and learning to be had about the mysteries in those myths. If we can go on our own underworld journey through October, then there is so much reward to be gained from that, you know, in terms of self-knowledge, in terms of feeling more solid in ourselves, of understanding ourselves. You know, we've got this communication aspect coming through with Mercury as well. So yeah, it's an exciting one. It is a kind of feisty one, I suppose. I don't know. Yeah, how could you describe it? I'm sure there'll be lots of doom and gloom, I suppose, that people are talking about with this eclipse, because it is quite a kind of, there's a lot of signatures, there's a lot of aspects, interesting aspects and things going on with it, which can sometimes lead to kind of fear-mongering, really, I suppose. Like, not always, and like the astrological community in general is very lovely. But just don't be pulled into fear, but what we do need to be pulled into is the darkness, that kind of our own darkness, but we don't stay there. You know, we've got this month to do this work, and then we are going to return, like Inanna returns, like, you know, like the hero returns. We come back out of these underworld journeys renewed, with new knowledge, with new understanding of ourselves. And that is what is going to set us up to do this finalizing, this completion work in that area of self and other that we are working on with these Libra Aries eclipses. So by the time we get to the final one next year, we will have wrapped up these loose ends. We'll have tied it all up in a nice bow, hopefully, you know. And also, like, you know, the work never really stops. Whenever we find that there's, you know, we do the work, we realize there's more and more layers, you know, like peeling an onion, like Shrek. Ogres. Okay, maybe I'm going a bit crazy off piste here, but I hope not. I hope you're getting what I'm saying. So one of the other very interesting things about this eclipse is that we have this pattern here, this triangle pattern here, and that is being formed. It's a grand water trine. A grand trine is when we have the full triangle being formed by the trine, and that is formed by planets being, is it 150 degrees? I always forget the exact degrees away from each other. So they're more or less 150 degrees away from each other. So we've got not 150, sorry, 120. So we've got Venus, so we've already talked about. We've got Mars, which is down here in Cancer. And then we've got Saturn up here in Pisces. So let's talk about that Venus and Mars. So trine energy is very, it's usually like easy energy. It's when energy flows between these planets in these parts of our chart, in these signs, easily. And when that is happening, it can make things in our lives kind of like magnified and also kind of like easier, just flow better. But it can also kind of like, you know, you can kind of get stuck also in this kind of triangular flow of energy, which can kind of make us lean into certain aspects of ourselves and not explore others. So, and also, there's a lot of other things to unpack around this. Like I said, Venus is not happy in Scorpio. She is not happy in Mars's realm of Scorpio, in that underworld realm. She knows she needs to be in there. You know, that is where she can find this wisdom that she's seeking, the answers that she's seeking. But she doesn't love it. You know, she's not loving being there. And Mars in Cancer, also, like, this is the sign of the moon. Mars's nature is antithetical to that moon ebb and flow nature. So Mars does not like being in Cancer. So we've got this flow of energy between these two planets that are not comfortable in their own signs. Mars actually rules Scorpio. So Mars is kind of ruling Venus's underworld journey, which is interesting as well. You know, he's kind of guiding that underworld journey. Venus is doing that journey in Mars's house, in Mars's home, in Mars's kingdom. So yeah, it's like, when I said we need courage to do this work, I feel like that is that Mars influence is definitely coming in there, and it is supporting. Mars is supporting this work that Venus is doing in the underworld in this eclipse season that we're in now. Mars in Cancer, you know, we're talking about protecting the things that we love. You know, like we want to have, like I say, solid boundaries. We also, though, don't want to kind of defend for the sake of defending, which sometimes, like Mars in Cancer, that's why it's kind of doesn't work. It's like, because Mars is not very, Mars likes to kind of be very kind of direct action usually, although not so much in Scorpio, but yeah, you know, it's like kind of direct action. Whereas Mars in Cancer is like protection of the home, protection of people that we care about, our families, you know, it's that kind of realm that is being brought up for us. So we can also, though, sometimes go too much on this and be like overprotective or even like defensive. That's the word I was looking for. Defensive. So just be aware. You might feel like you're being attacked when you're not, but also you might be being attacked and you do need to stand up for yourself. You know, it's figuring out those situations. It's like, am I actually being attacked in this situation? Or you know, like, and that awareness will come to us during this eclipse. It's like, oh, okay, yeah, this is not right how things are. And then we can use that Mars energy to be able to change things, you know, to be able to put those healthy boundaries in place and to like be direct as well about like, this is not working for me. This relationship is not working for me. This attitude that you have towards me is not caring. This is not loving, and I will not tolerate that. You know, really kind of drawing that line in the sand. So those planets are like working together, but like I said, in strange places for them. And then we've got Saturn here in Pisces, and Saturn is also like not super comfortable in Pisces. It's not as in detriment in like kind of traditional astrology terms as Mars and Venus are. But yeah, Saturn is not strong in Pisces, because if we think of Saturn as being that kind of like solid, structured, grandfathery type energy, and then Pisces is about like dissolving structures and blurring boundaries and kind of moving things, moving everything into one thing, you know. So it's like, well, it's all just one thing really. That's what Pisces kind of vibe is. And Saturn's like, well, okay, maybe, but let's also have concrete things that we can work with, structures that we can work with, because we need that, don't we? You know, we need both of those energies. And it's always that kind of interplay between knowing that we are part of the universe, you know, or source, that kind of one substance that we're all made of, but then also the truth that we are us, you know, we are an individual part as well. You know, it's not that one is true and one is false, it's that they're just different ways of looking at things. I feel like I've talked about this before when I was talking about like zoomed out and zoomed in perspectives, and that is, both perspectives are true. It doesn't mean that one of them is true and one of them is false. It's just that it's different ways of seeing things, different ways of approaching things, and both can be helpful. So I feel like that Saturn in Pisces, Saturn retrograde in Pisces, although like starting to slow down its retrograde pattern now, and it will be turning direct again fairly soon. It's another kind of vote for like redoing, looking at those structures, at those boundaries, at those places where perhaps we've allowed other people to dominate us, maybe, or to, where we've gone along with things. Where have we gone along with things that are not healthy for us? Let's break that pattern now. Let's try and break out of this triangle. Use this eclipse energy to break out of this triangle. And instead of like kind of going along with people who are not, who don't have our best interests at heart really, learning to properly nurture and protect ourselves and those that are important to us, and then seeking that deep information about ourselves, that truth about ourselves and who we are, so that we can show up properly in our relationships, so we can show up fully in our relationships. These are all the themes that are kind of being brought out by this this eclipse. So yeah, you know, it is deep work that we're doing here. And we've also got this other little pattern happening, which is between Pluto and Capricorn. Pluto is in Capricorn now until November, doing its last pass in Capricorn that we will experience in our lifetimes. You know, we'll be back there for another like 250 years. So we are also tying up patterns that have been in place since Pluto has been in Capricorn since 2008. You know, this is a long kind of like an era in our lives. We're having our Pluto in Capricorn era is coming to an end. And so as well as like having this 1 month of focusing on this underworld journey, it's also a matter of reflecting back on these times since 2008, that Pluto and Capricorn journeys that are happening, and clearing space, like I said, like letting go of things so that we can show up. Like that's so said now, it's like a cliche. It's like show up more authentically, but like show up confidently as our core self, knowing who we are, you know, as we move into this new time when Pluto goes back into Aquarius now after November. This is a new era in our lives that is starting, a new chapter for us. And so we can, if we can tie up these loose ends and let these things go, then that is really powerful stuff. And we can see that there's another trine aspect happening here from that Pluto and Capricorn to Uranus and Taurus as well, which is Uranus allows us to make these changes, you know. So this is supportive energy, is so lovely. And they're also both forming sextiles to Neptune. So that Neptune kind of dissolving energies, that release, you know, this is such a good time now for us to be able to release that crap that has been holding us now, pinning us into something, maybe like putting us in a box since 2008, and letting that go now. Because like we do change, we do grow, we do evolve, and some of the kind of relationships and people and stuff in our lives don't necessarily know who we are now. We don't necessarily know who we are now, which is why we need to take this underworld journey, you know, this Venus through Scorpio journey, to find out the truth of who we are, so that we can then relate to other people. You know, like Venus is all about relating, connecting things, but we can't really connect authentically, truthfully, when we don't know who we are at our core, you know. And like, this is, like I said, this is a process, this is a journey, because who we are as our core is always like slightly different, you know. Like, it's not like we find the truth of this and then that one truth is the same thing through our lives, because it does evolve, it does change. I think there are definitely parts of it that are true, you know, like kind of absolutely true and will stay with us, but it's not. And often it's about unpacking the layers, which Mercury's gonna be able to do as well. Of like, often we think our core self is who we think we are. It's like, I think I'm this, and this eclipse is giving us the opportunity to unthink that, to rethink that, to enable us to drop those stories of what we're telling ourselves are true about ourselves, and actually go on a journey of discovery of what is actually true. So it's really exciting, I think it's really, really exciting. And I didn't mention it, but Mars is also squaring this eclipse, you know. So Mars in Cancer, that we've already talked about, bringing that kind of unhappy but necessary protector, kind of like mama bear energy as well, like Mars in Cancer is being activated very strongly by this eclipse. So you may feel like I said, protective, perhaps defensive as well. So that's okay. Like, we defend things that we care about, but sometimes we're defending things that we've actually outgrown, you know. We're defending the stories that we've told ourselves about who we are, when actually it is time to let those stories go and allow this journey to change us, and to let those new stories filter through. Yeah. Okay. So I think that is all that I wanted to say about the chart and about the energy of the eclipse. Let's pull some cards. So last time at the new moon, we got the King of Wands from the Paulina Cassidy Tarot, from the Paulina Tarot. I'm going to pop that there. I've pulled out the Goddess of Love Tarot for this month's reading. I haven't had this deck that long. It's a Gabriela Herstik deck. I'll link it down below. And like, I've had some really good readings. I've had some strange readings with this deck, but yeah, I thought it'd be very on point because of, you know, Venus is ruling this eclipse basically. So I've already shuffled these cards, but I will give them another little shuffle as well. I'm going to take 2 cards. I've been feeling like I want something a little bit more to dive into as like a card of the month. I want like cards of the month instead. So yeah, I'm going to be taking 2 cards, and we'll see how that goes as we go through this moon cycle. That King of Wands energy has definitely been coming through. It's been like asking me to step into that idea of like creative power, of owning my own creative power, and being confidence is a word that keeps coming up for me, you know, has been coming up for me over this moon cycle. So yeah, that King of Wands energy has been really putting the fire in my belly. I was working with my therapist about like basically she asked me like, what do you want to do in the session? So I was like, oh no, I just go blank when she asks me that. And like, I don't know why, because she asks me every time, so I could just prepare something, but that kind of also feels inauthentic somehow. So I want to just kind of say what it is at the moment that I want to speak to. And I do make like notes and stuff. Sometimes she gives me exercises to do and things like that, but she said, I said, I don't know. And she said, well, what would Goddess, because like I talked to her a lot about Goddess, like what would Goddess want you, like what does Goddess want you to do in this session? And I just like closed my eyes, and I got this image of a candle burning in my like in my solar plexus area, a candle, like it just kind of sparked into flame, and then it was starting to burn brighter and brighter in my solar plexus. And I said, I just I just described what I was seeing to her, and she was like, oh, okay. And then we started doing she's a somatic therapist, so we did some like body work and stuff around it about generating that. So I've been working with that solar plexus energy, and I made like an oil to put on that part of me, like to draw, like bring out that fire energy, that confidence, because it felt like before that was somehow like myself has snuffed my candle in reaction to how I was being like perceived in the world, and Goddess really needs me to have this candle burning brightly within me at the moment. So yeah, I'm working on stoking that, on building that, and that King of Wands has been just so perfect with that energy and that work that I'm doing. So let's see what's going to come up for this next. Okay. So we got 2 of Pentacles and 7 of Cups. Okay, interesting. So let's have a look at these cards. We've got 2 of Pentacles, and we've got some planetary stuff going on this card as well. So we've got the yin yang symbol, that idea of like balance between opposites, which is very on point for this Libra Aries axis for sure, and between this work that we're doing with like the Mars and Venus themes. Also like the eclipse in general, because that is kind of what happens when we have the sun and the moon coming together as well, and making this this like blended energy, you know, the 2 of Pentacles. Like often the 2 of Pentacles is seen as almost like a kind of juggling, like it comes out often in readings when you've like been doing too much work and you need to be doing more play, or perhaps you've been, you know, or vice versa. It's usually about kind of like juggling too many commitments. I see it as being the kind of a magician card of the minor arcana, because it's like we've got a lot of potentials and things that we can work with, but we haven't quite like mastered how to kind of put all that into practice. So that's really interesting. It's like we've got like a skill, like a tangible skill to learn in this cycle, and that skill is about like balancing those things, like the self versus other, like the who am I at my core, and then how do I relate to other people. Those are the things that are like kind of coming up. But it looks like, I love how it doesn't look like it's a balancing act in this card. It just looks really beautiful actually and celebratory. You know, we got this gorgeous cornucopia here as well, which is very Venusian. Yeah, and like what flower is that? Maybe we'll have a look at the book in a moment and see what the book says about these as well, because I find the writing quite interesting about the cards. Like the take on the meanings of the cards is quite different in this deck than it is in other decks. And then we've got the 7 of Cups, which we've actually got this like mermaid. We've got Mars's symbol on here. And so I'm seeing this straight away as being like Venus in Venus in Scorpio. Venus is going on this underworld journey in Mars's terrain. And we've even got like the 7, oh my gosh. So in Inanna's story, there is 7 gates. And at each of these gates, she has to pass up, you know, she gives up something about herself. So she gives up her like jeweled chest plate. She gives up her headdress. She gives up, you know, she at every gate she has to surrender something, until when she gets to the depth of the underworld, she is completely naked. She's been stripped of all of the like symbols and trappings of her as this kind of powerful goddess, and she just shows up as the raw core of herself. And I feel like that is what is happening in this card, in this 7 of Cups card. It is showing us that we, you know, like in the 7 of Cups, usually it's like it comes up often in moments of indecision. It's like, oh, I don't know, I can't decide. There's all these options and I don't know what it is that I should be doing, you know. It's like that kind of confusion path, you know, and it's like, I don't know what to choose. And I feel like what it's saying to us now, as it's come up in this reading, is that we need to like not choose. we can't choose yet because we don't have all the information that we need. So instead of like choosing one of the things in the cups, and it's interesting that like the cups often have got like different things in them, like in the traditional Rider-Waite and in lots of the like Rider-Waite inspired decks, but these cups almost look like empty, and there's just these like kind of roses and patterns around the outside. We got these gorgeous shells, which also, that's like whenever I see shells in the cards, it's always my mother Mary, who is saying this is very important for you now, you know, you can reach this truth at the bottom here. But the way that we do it is not by choosing these like illusory options which are being presented to us, but by actually like stripping away each of these things as we go through the different gates until we get to that raw kind of core of ourselves. And that is where we will, yes, meet our dark sister. And there will be a death of sorts, you know, there will be a release, a letting go, but then there will be a renewal. And that is why we do this work. That is why we do this work. Let's have a look at what it says in here about these cards. So, Two of Pentacles. Okay, the astrological correspondence is Jupiter in Capricorn, which is interesting. Like I said, we've got Pluto in Capricorn. Jupiter is kind of like lightly involved by a kind of loose square to Pisces in this. But it's that idea of like expansion within Saturn's realm, you know? So yeah, I think that's also like Pluto is aligned with those underworldy journeys anyway. The Two of Pentacles indicates the relationship that exists between the head and heart, between the self and other, and between the body and the outside world. Yes, so on point. This duality reflects the interplay between opposing forces before a decision is made. Remember to practice radical honesty. Explore the answers hidden within the physicality of the self. Ask yourself what the situation calls for and feel into the sensations that arise when you question how you can give this to yourself. Listen to the wisdom of your body and then decide. Oh my gosh, I feel like I said all this stuff. So this is great, having it all kind of pulled together in a much more succinct way. Allowing things to evolve, both within and outside your control, is an act of love and service to the world. Oh, yeah. When the card is reversed, it wasn't reversed, so we don't worry about that. But you can look for imbalances. You know, that is some of the things we're doing. And consider how you can take a different perspective to understand what needs to be tended to and cared for. This Mars in Cancer. You know, the right decision may have yet to show itself. Yes, we spoke about this. Or perhaps you need to make a decision if you've been avoiding one. But like I said, I feel like we can't make this decision yet until we've undertaken the journey, you know, until we've gathered the knowledge. An affirmation: I surrender to the magic of the body. I trust in my ability to navigate change. Journal question: what is calling for both compassionate action and surrendered transformation? Wow, so I really feel like it's pulling up these Mars, Venus, and like that. There's so much like this Mars, Venus. There's that Pluto stuff that's going on. It's the Sun and the Moon as well. Yeah, really, really interesting. Let's have a look at our Seven of Cups. So, oh my gosh. Okay, so the astrological correspondence is Venus in Scorpio. Yes, there we go. It is the exact picture, you know, which is what I felt it was when it came up. I didn't know that was the case with this card, but yes, Venus in Scorpio. Okay, if you've ever had a crush, then you know the sensation of new relationship energy. It's buzzing and electric and makes you feel the limitless possibilities of connection. And although this vibe is exciting, it can also leave you off kilter or cause you to miss yellow or red flags. If there's NRE, new relationship energy, and you're having killer sex, you might be in what I call a fuck fog. I should have warned you actually, this deck is like very much about sexual relationships, usually between like men and women as well, but not always. Like it is about the erotic divine, that kind of red goddess thread. So I should have given you a trigger warning on that, sorry. Too late now, sorry about that. Love and sex don't always leave you seeing clearly. And that's the message of the Seven of the Cups. Honor your range of feelings and tune into your heart always, but be wary of getting too caught up in the feelings without taking a reality check. Yes. So what I feel like my take on that for this time period is like we can let certain things, like being in a relationship with somebody, like if there is a physical relationship and stuff there, which naturally, like when we do have sex, it stimulates our bonding hormones. You know, we will release oxytocin, which makes us feel bonded with that person, which is not necessarily good for us, you know, because we don't want to have that kind of like hormonal cocktail influencing our feelings necessarily. So again, you know, another take on having those boundaries and kind of really figuring out who we are, because then we can be more discerning. This card can represent a fantasy world and deep longings, and you want to be sure that any relationship or situationship is one in which words and actions are aligned. If it seems too good to be true, it may very well be. When the card shows up reversed, perhaps you are finally stepping out of fantasy and seeing things for how they actually are. No matter what, remember that you still have the power to see clearly if you choose to step into a new perspective. Okay, so I'm not super resonating with that write-up here in the book, which is why I always think it's better to have your own take first before you look in the guidebook. But, you know, it's always fun to look in the guidebook. I feel like this card has come up for us because it is literally Venus in Scorpio. And the write-up, while there may be some gems to find in there, you know, some wisdom to be found in there, it's not necessarily so pertinent to this particular situation that we're talking about here. The affirmation is, I'm guided by the truth and clarity, by the actuality of love and romance. Yeah, interesting. And the journal question is, how can I shift my perspective to own all the facets of this experience without getting lost in the fantasy? And like we do have, like when we have a water trine, that kind of watery energy can bring those kind of fantasy elements to the core. And like we do have Neptune here in this aspect between Pluto and Uranus, pointing up to this Neptune. So, you know, we can sometimes let what we wish was the case stop us from doing what we need to do in order to actually properly protect ourselves and to be loving to ourselves. Yeah, you know, so just be aware of that kind of fantasy element that can come through. We can't allow what we wish to kind of colour what actually is, you know. So this is all about finding what actually is. So I hope that is useful. I much preferred having the two cards. So I think maybe that is what I will do moving forward. Let me know what you think of all this that has come up and how that resonates for you, how that hits for you. Thank you so much for being here. Warmest blessings, and I will see you very soon.